Because my primary client works in the defense sector, I spent a lot of time studying the cost-benefit analysis of military campaigns. There was one program in particular that terrified my client the most. A simple 3-stage maneuver that could topple a country's government from within. First stage was isolation. Disable their communication and transportation. Make the target as deaf, dumb, and paralyzed as possible, setting them up for the second stage. Synchronized chaos. Terrorize them with covert attacks and misinformation. Overwhelming their defense capabilities, leaving their weapon systems vulnerable to extremists in their own military. Without a clear enemy or motive, people would start turning on each other. Done successfully, the third stage would happen on its own.
What's the third stage?
A coup d'etat. Civil war. Collapse. This program was considered the most cost-effective way to destabilize the country. Because if the target nation was dysfunctional enough, it would, in essence, do the work for you. Whoever started this wants us to finish it.
And the sick thing is, I think deep down we know we're not fooling anyone. I think we know we're living a lie. An agreed upon mass delusion to help us ignore and keep ignoring how awful we really are. An agreed upon mass delusion to help us ignore and keep ignoring how awful we really are.
So these people really are not playing with us. They mock us and tell us the truth right in our faces because they know how dysfunctional we are and how programmed and mentally controlled we are. Like many of you, I recently watched a new Netflix movie that was released called Leave the World Behind. If you've not watched that movie, there will be spoilers in this video, just so you know. When I first saw the trailer, I was interested because they made it first like a thriller about this black man showing up to a house saying that it was his. I was like, where are they going with this? But very shortly after I viewed this movie, it was easy to see that was just marketing. I honestly don't like doing reviews on movies because this is not what this channel is about. I am in no way promoting or endorsing this movie or advocating anyone to see it. But being that so many people have commented and asked if I had watched it, I feel led to share some thoughts. This movie is alarming for multiple reasons. For a long time in this ministry, I have tried to warn and prepare people for the time when the world changes. It's coming. Even the devil is given proper warning, and if you're not ready for it, this will be on you. You must understand that this is no longer a conspiracy theory. So we're going to talk about this movie, Leave the World Behind. Let's begin. Okay, so let me first say that this movie, I feel, went accurately through the emotions of men and women of this world. I don't share anything with most of the characters in this movie. Maybe with Mahershala's character, how he was calm and how he was trying to handle himself through this panic. But for the most part, I don't share any of the views of the characters, even with Kevin Bacon, who was a prepper. The way they all were just more examples of why I have consistently said to be prepared to be isolated. You honestly don't want any of these people in your circle when the time comes. Though this movie was about the beginning moments of the Great Reset, it is important to recognize what the mental programming was. It was a sort of training for the masses who are not really ready yet. It was mental conditioning for them on what to expect. If you have been following this ministry and have been preparing, first and foremost spiritually and then mentally, but also physically with supplies, make sure you only use this movie as an example of what your neighbors and what the outside world will be like. We have been preparing so that we can stay inside and weather the storm while they get it all figured out. What I took from all of this was just a confirmation of my initial thought that we are staying inside and locking up when this starts. The mindset is get to home base and wait for Yah. And I still stand on that. Anyways, let's talk about the movie. At first, I didn't recognize that this movie was produced by the Obamas, until after a sister in the faith mentioned it to me in the comments. Can you really understand that the former president of the United States produced and was a major advisor on a movie about the beginning of the collapse of America? He gave his spin on what it would look like to him. And some of the messages he allowed to be shared in the movie should not be overlooked. I mean, this is a former president of this country. I don't think people recognize how much these people are playing with us, and they don't respect us. They know as a whole the society is weak and mentally controlled, and they basically could show us anything, and the majority of us won't act on it. I mean, I have friends, I've been talking about this stuff for years, and even with movies like this produced by a former president, it still does not provoke them in urgency that they need to be prepared for a time when life completely is in collapse mode. The director of this movie was Sam Esmail. I believe for me personally, this is the second piece of work I've seen from him, the first being Mr. Robot. This man makes content about the collapse and about the secret societies that run this world. He also deals with the mind in his content. There are a lot of metaphors and subliminals all packed into it, and so it could be like a treasure hunt when you're watching it. He places things in the movies that allude to many different things. Like with Mr. Robot. This is how Mr. Robot was marketed back in 2015.
What I'm about to tell you is top secret. A conspiracy bigger than all of us. There's a powerful group of people out there that are secretly running the world. I'm talking about the guys no one knows about, the guys that are invisible. The top 1% of the top 1%, the guys that play God without permission. And now I think they're following me.
Yeah, and this was when Obama was president, right before Trump was coming on the scene. Obama was used in clips to highlight the first part of the agenda in Mr. Robot, which led to the world using cryptocurrencies. They make many different references to Mr. Robot in this movie, leaving the world behind as well. Anyways, let's deal with the movie. I want to start at the moment that probably gets lost in our minds as we continue on with the plot. But this scene should be understood because of the metaphor. This scene is when the oil tanker keeps coming towards the shore. They saw this oil tanker, but it was far from them. It was close enough to get their attention and see, but not close enough for them to think about it. It was approaching, slowly, but they ignored it until it was so close that it was about to hit them. Matter of fact, they still wouldn't even known it was coming unless their daughter had warned them. They kept using that girl as the one with most sense and with her eyes opened, but I'm not going to focus on that. I really don't care. The oil tanker was definitely a metaphor of everyone in the movie and in this world. You see, everyone in this world, they see something happening. They know things aren't right. Matter of fact, Julia Roberts, she alludes to this later in the movie.
Yes. I think deep down we know we're not fooling anyone. I think we know we're living a lie. An agreed upon mass delusion to help us ignore and keep ignoring how awful we really are.
They all know something. They see something coming, but they feel it's better to just ignore it. But it keeps coming slowly while they live comfortably while it approaches. They don't recognize that danger is coming straight towards them. They ignore it. And here's the craziest part. Even when it's almost there, they still kind of deny it. Like when Julia Roberts asked her husband, did he think it's a problem? And he basically said, no, it'll stop. It's got to, right? Even with all the evidence that something was wrong, they still denied it. All until it was about to hit them. I mean, think about it. What were the people doing as they saw it coming? They stood there looking at it. This was a metaphor of how everything that is going to happen in the movie actually happened, which is why they put it in the movie first. This illustrates and explains how everyone is today. They know problems are here, but they live in their comfort and in their ignorance, expecting that at some point it's going to stop. They really feel that it won't actually come to shore and affect them. And they will believe this all the way until it's right on shore and they are forced to move. It's very sad, but for the most part, this is everyone we know. Now, something interesting to note. The name of the oil tanker was called White Lion. They made sure we saw this too. I do not think that this was a coincidence. Understand this. In late August of the year 1619, the first slaves taken from Negroland in Africa, which was once called the Songhai dynasty, which descended from the Hebrew kings of Ghana, these Negroes landed at Point Comfort, today's Fort Monroe in Hampton, Virginia. They came aboard the English privateer ship White Lion. Understand, the first Negroes brought to America came on the ship called White Lion. You see, these people know judgment is upon this nation for the sins they did to Yah's chosen people. It's not a coincidence that they named that oil tanker White Lion. The first major product that they brought upon the shores of this country were slaves. And the last major product that they brought upon this country is oil. They blended it all together. This is not a coincidence. Also, it should be noted that they made the husband very weak, and his wife led the family, not him. In the end, he admits that he's a worthless man.
I can barely do anything without my cell phone and my GPS. I am a useless man.
Our men need to wake up and look at that example and recognize this is what the majority of families look like today. None of your families need to be anything similar to this family. It's how this family was unprepared and not ready for the disaster. Now, after the tanker issue, they drive in a car, they see a Starbucks that brings them back to their normal reality and way of life, and they move on from it. Again, it's right in their face that a problem is occurring. Their phones aren't even working, but they will do whatever it takes to stay in their delusion. Now, before that movie actually starts with the main plot, the husband and wife were playing Jenga. Again, like I keep saying, this was not a coincidence. Jenga is deeper than just a family game. It is also a metaphor. It was created by Tanzanian-born British game designer Leslie Scott. Jenga is a metaphor that's supposed to teach us to remove outdated layers that no longer serve a purpose. They say that we do this every time we let go of relationships, jobs, move from an old neighborhood that isn't working for us anymore, or shed obsolete ways of thinking. Like Jenga, we have to build onto the top as we remove the bottom. And we have to do this in a way that in the end we can still stand. So the fact that they were playing this game alludes to what they are about to do. They are going to have to let go of their old, outdated views of the world that no longer serve a purpose. For instance, like with Julia Roberts' hating of people. She was going to have to learn to put away her hate and her biases and understand that she has to work with people and be a friend to them. Her story is definitely one that will help build the mental attitude that will be needed when they try to bring the world together. In the beginning, they showed that she hated people, but in the end, they have her holding hand with a girl that was once a stranger, showing that she had to get rid of outdated principles and begin to grow together and accept people differently because the world has changed. Now, when the movie starts, it's when Mahershala Ali and his daughter get there. And let's go through the events. First, it was a blackout, there was no power. Also, the cell networks were down and the internet was down. So there was chaos in the city and he knew that he had to get out of there. They blamed it on a cyber attack. Now let me just say, in regards to what will happen in the future, I do not pretend to have an idea of exactly how things will start, but I do tend to believe that it will happen similar to this, unexpectedly and gradually. These things I do expect to happen, the blackout and all communication cut off. As a population, we are so completely dependent on our cell phones and our ability to have access to the system and for the system to be able to communicate with us. I believe that will be the first thing to go out initially in order for the chaos and panic to start. I believe they will only use the phones in order to send out their warnings, which totally keeps everyone in a state of panic. They just tested out this warning system in October, if you remember. For those who follow this ministry and aren't just watching because you wanted to hear about this movie, it is important that these expectations are yours as well. Have an expectation and understanding that at times of trouble, your phone will not work, and you will be without power. They didn't really illustrate the blackout in the movie, but they spoke about it. The daughter kept talking about power stations and where they were. Have an expectation to be without power and not being able to talk with your family. This is why you should have a plan now. Talk to your family and make sure everyone understands that in the event of an emergency and they are not able to communicate, have a meeting point where everyone must come to. If everyone has a plan, you don't have to worry about if they know what to do. Have a plan. I believe what they illustrated in this movie is more likely going to happen, and it will happen unexpectedly. If you're mentally ready for it, you will keep yourself from the panic like the others. There will be no power, no phones, no internet. Now here's the thing. I do believe eventually these things will all come back online. And it is at this point that the world will begin to reset. They're going to give their narratives and they're going to give their spin and they're going to tell you how everything's going to merge back together. This is important. For those who trust in Messiah, it is very important to know who is leading you and not to follow the pack being led to slaughter. That's all I'm going to say at this point. Now, the movie alluded to much of what I have said in my videos for a long time. Like I said, Esmail, the director himself, has made content that discusses this power that lives behind the scenes. This is what Mr. Robot was all about. As the plot begins to thicken, Mahershala Ali's character goes into more about himself, saying that he saw all this coming, speaking about the fact that he reads the patterns that control the world. While he was explaining this, Julia Roberts was still in denial, so she accused him of being paranoid. These people live in denial until something hits them, and shortly after, it did. That electronic tone hits. It affects them all. Later in the movie, Kevin Bacon's character alludes to it being something similar to what happened in Cuba. If you remember, in 2016, they called it the Havana Syndrome. It was a noise or high-pitched frequency that affected Americans in Cuba.
Since 2016, U.S. government officials overseas and their families have reported sudden, unexplained brain injuries with symptoms of vertigo, confusion, and memory loss. The CIA, FBI, and State Department are investigating a theory that some of these officials were injured by an unseen weapon. Who might be targeting Americans and why are unknown. Incidents have been reported in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, but our reporting has found senior national security officials who say they were stricken in Washington and on the grounds of the White House.
It seems they were testing out their weapon there. We don't know much about the weapon as of now. We don't know how it works. They added this point in the movie to promote fear. Being that we know very little about it, I advise not to allow fear of this weapon to enter in. Though it could affect you, it does not seem as if it could kill you. It would be just more of a weapon to promote fear and panic during these times. Do not focus on that weapon or let it promote fear. Okay, so after that weapon hits, this is when you finally see Julia Roberts leave from denial to panic. If you notice, Ali's character and his daughter were calm. Then she was freaking out. Imagine this on steroids when this all happens. You do not want to be around these people who are just waking up to this at this stage. She was now ready to go to the shelter, hoping the government was going to protect her. She immediately also went into her checklist for emergencies. But it should be noted that at the time of the emergency, if you're going through a checklist for the emergencies, you have a problem on your hands. You need to understand that at the time of the collapse, this is how people will be, and they'll be either so desperate to run to the arms of the government or so helpless that they will run to the streets to get help or protest or whatever. Either way, these people will be your biggest threats. Understand now what will be in their heads and plan for them, because it will not be the government that will be your biggest threat at first. It will be those unprepared like your neighbors, which is why you do not want too many people knowing that you're prepared. Look at Kevin Bacon's character. They knew he would be prepared, and whose house was the first they went to. Just know that these are the people that are going to destroy things, just like the ending suggests. They're bringing them out for chaos. They're going to destroy themselves. So let me just get to that. Like I said, Ali's character goes into the story of how he knew something was wrong. He has a client that was very powerful that we would know. They didn't give the name of the client, who probably was a high-ranking politician. They didn't give his name because it really didn't matter. We all could think of plenty of real people who could potentially fit this description. But it all comes down to the fact that the obscenely wealthy and powerful are the ones who get a heads up while the masses will suffer. That's the first thing they want us to take from it. Secondly, he talks about the evil cabal that runs the world. It's so funny how people can call me a conspiracy theorist, but these people make these movies and they always tell us that this is true. Again, this is what Mr. Robot was about. Anyways, in his story, he says that he asked his client,
"Oh yeah, you hanging with your evil cabal this weekend? Thought that was only during the winter solstice."
The fact that he said that is just crazy. There's no coincidence. These people meet to go to worship Satan. If you understand the winter solstice, which is on December 21st, that will be clear. They are telling you that these people are preparing to meet right now. And it's funny because in Mr. Robot, they allude to the same thing, the evil cabal meeting together around the winter solstice. Anyways, at the end of the show, Ali's character goes into confirmation of what is happening. And this is the clip that right now is being shared and being focused on. There are key points you need to focus on when he expresses what is happening. And those are isolation, disinformation, and then chaos. Everything else you can ignore besides the fact that this is all well planned. You see, the movie wants us to believe that the only advantage that the wealthy have is access to information that gives them a head start. But in the end, no one has control. That's what he says is much more scary. And the only part of that I agree with is in regards to what Yah is going to do. Which for, they must wait and see, and then they react with spreading their own narrative. But they really want people to believe that when all this occurs, there will be no one really pulling the strings. Yet they admit that there is an evil cabal running the world. In the end, though, it doesn't matter who's in charge and what they're doing. They have plans, and everyone in the world will be affected by them. And like they do with everything else, there's going to be clips talking about this conspiracy and that conspiracy. But for those who follow this ministry, you should be more mentally mature past all that to not follow all those distractions. This movie, Leave the World Behind, is a movie that has illustrated to us what things may look like in the beginning of the collapse. It is a movie that will drive fear and make those unprepared unsettled. You should use this movie as a gauge of your faith. If you are able to watch that movie and were not moved by fear or feelings of insecurity, you have been doing the work advised to you to be prepared and be ready. It is those who have not prepared and have not gotten their houses in order, they feel unsettled and fearful, and that's because they are not doing what was advised to them. The creators of this movie are clearly engaging in predictive programming, getting the masses mentally ready for a problem. When it occurs, it will look much differently, I'm sure. This was just conditioning. I do believe it will be blamed on a cyber attack. I don't really know how it will start though. I don't honestly care too much either. It's all about being ready, being spiritually, mentally, and physically prepared. The writings have been on the wall for a while now, and most people are like the family watching the ship come to shore. They're just waiting and ignoring it until it comes to them and it actually affects them. If you watch that movie, it should be a wake-up call to you to not get too comfortable and not be complacent. You do not want to be like the other 90% of the population that are waiting to be reactive. I mean, for me, I think about all those Christians waiting to be raptured. They will be a part of these problems. They will be like Julia Roberts' character. Don't know what to do, and they're going to panic because they have built themselves up around falsehoods. Please remember, Proverbs chapter 22 verse 3 says, "A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished." If you have not begun to prepare, now is the time. I have made videos about preparations. There's a playlist that you can go through that may help you if you're just now recognizing the need to prepare. I have also made this checklist. It's on my website. The link is in the description box. Download it and begin to use it and prepare. But just remember that your preparations are not your source, and they are not your savior. Your physical preparations are just resources, but they are not your source. The only thing that matters is our source. Do not live one-track minded, only in a mindset of physical protection of your body, because believers will be persecuted. Live in a mindset of spiritually protecting your soul, mentally guarding your heart, not to be led by demons and devils, but being led by our Father in heaven. Know that if you confess with your mouth the Master, Yahusha, and believe in your heart that Elohim has raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. That's Romans chapter 10, verse 9. The days ahead are getting darker, and much uncertainty awaits, but not for the children of Yah. As believers, we know what awaits us. Live with the scripture always, and you will be fine. Who shall separate us from the love of the Messiah? Shall pressure, or distress, or persecution, or scarcity of food, or nakedness, or danger, or sword? As it has been written, for your sake we are all killed all day long. We are reckoned as sheep of slaughter. But in all this we are more than overcomers through him who loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor messengers, nor principalities, nor powers, neither the present nor the future, nor height nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of Elohim, which is in Messiah Yahusha, our Master. That's Romans chapter 8, verses 35 through 39. Please know, believe, and understand that nothing that this world will try to throw at us can separate us from the love of our Master and Savior, Yahusha. If you understand this, then you have nothing to fear. So stay watchful and be ready. This movie was a good wake-up call, but for me, it really didn't change much. It didn't really get me up on anything. For me, I just truly wonder what these people actually have planned. Seeing Obama produce a film like this, it's very telling. I don't know what they have in store, but whatever their plans are for the wicked. I live with Yahuwah as my source and my guide. I actually await and look forward to these things happening because I know it is leading me to Yah's promises. Listen, do not align yourself with this world. Do not focus on their storylines and their narratives. Focus on your faith and your relationship with Yah. Do not get distracted by these movies and let fear provoke you. The chaos that's coming is for the unjust and the wicked. That's on them. If you saw this movie, the only thing it should do is give you a proper assessment of where you stand when these things will take place. If you recognize that you had fear and that you start feeling uneasy, you need to develop more faith and get your house in order. Make sure you are right with Yah and align yourself to his kingdom. Everything else does not matter. Do not plan to be among the wicked and the unjust. Become Yah's righteousness and prepare yourself for his kingdom, because in the end, you must understand that is the only thing that matters. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please don't forget to like this and share this video with others. If you have not done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. If there is ever a time that you do not see my channel on YouTube, please look for me on my website. As always, I would really like to thank all those who support this ministry. You know who you are. Your contributions have been an extreme blessing to this ministry, and I'm very thankful for you. Thank you for your support and being a blessing to this ministry and following the call Yah has placed on your heart. Thank you. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again for watching, everyone. I love you all.